Hello, friends, and welcome to a new sofa session here at Seawe World Water Week. We are in Stockholm, and we are going to be discussing a very interesting topic today. The name of the sofa session is Microplastics in Fresh Water Environments. And joining me today, it's a lovely lady from UNESCO, so Sarantuyaa Zandaryaa. Thank you, Sarantuyaa, for joining me.
Good morning. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you. So Sarantuyaa is a program specialist at the Division of Water Sciences in UNESCO, and she's also the lead editor of this report that we're going to be discussing today, a UNESCO report called Microplastics in Freshwater Environments. So, Sarantuyaa, let's go right into it. What is the UNESCO IHP International Initiative on Water Quality?
Well, UNESCO International Initiative on Water Quality is an intergovernment, international scientific cooperative program aimed to support countries with the scientific knowledge, information, data to address water quality problems. It was established in 2012 by the Intergovernmental Council of UNESCO International Hydrological Program. It responds to the needs of the countries because the recommendation was given by African states that countries need more science to be able to develop policies, address water quality problems.
And what are emerging pollutants? If you can take us through that.
Yeah. Emerging pollutants represent a new water quality challenge globally. It is a problem both in developed and developing countries, with no exception. Even the most developed country where wastewater is treated 100% may still have problems of emerging pollutants. The challenge is that we have limited scientific knowledge about emerging pollutants, their potential effects to human health, and the emerging pollutants comprise a very wide variety of pollutants which were not regarded as pollutants before. Therefore, they are not monitored nor regulated, and we have limited scientific knowledge about their effects on human health and ecosystems.
And what is UNESCO's initiative role in addressing these issues?
Yeah. Given the fact that these are new pollutants, the scientific information and knowledge is limited. Our role being the scientific program, it is to provide scientific information and data on which basis solutions can be considered or developed, or policies, appropriate policy frameworks could be developed.
Okay, so within this frame, what are microplastics, and why are they a concern?
Yeah. Well, emerging pollutants comprise, as I said, a wide variety of pollutants, from pharmaceuticals to pesticides, industrial or household chemicals, antimicrobially resistant pathogens, and microplastics. So microplastics is one group of pollutants that emerged to be present in our water resources. So microplastics are the plastics that are less than 5 millimeter size,
so
and
very tiny.
Very tiny. And these tiny microplastics you would hardly see. You would only see if you put it on the tip of your finger.
I see.
And some of them are even of a smaller size that are invisible to human eyes, like nanoplastics or even microplastics.
Okay, and what are the risks associated with these pollutants?
Well, the microplastics is a huge challenge in terms of addressing. We have spoken a lot about marine plastic pollution, and this is only the tip of the iceberg, because that's what is visible and what we can see, that the plastics are floating on the oceans and seas. But microplastics may be present in much more higher quantities in seas, in fresh water, and we do not have any scientific information on their presence in freshwater and marine environment. And freshwater resources are one of the main sources and pathways of microplastic pollution in the seas and oceans. The main challenge is the research that is included in our UNESCO report on microplastics in freshwater environments indicate that microplastics are present in every part of the world. It's ubiquitous. and it's even present in very remote areas where there are new human activities. And we have even research published by other professors that they are even found in the Arctic.
I see.
Yeah, and also there are research that they are present in fish and aquatic organisms, and we don't know whether are there any potential risks to aquatic organisms or to human health.
And do countries have capacities to tackle these issues?
Well, the countries do not have capacities to tackle this issue because the tackling microplastics is much more complex. For example, there are increasing campaigns to clean up beaches from plastics.
Yeah.
This may work locally, but it would not work for microplastics because microplastics are small, and to tackle microplastics, we have to address the problem at the source and prevent the disposal of microplastics into the environment and into the water environment. Because microplastics originate from different sources. There are microplastics that are produced in sizes that are smaller than 5 millimeters or even in nano sizes. And they are intentionally added into products such as personal care products. For example, the scrub is one example. Whereas microplastic is just formed in the environment as a result of the fragmentation of plastic waste that is disposed in the environment. And the microplastics remain in the environment for a very long time because the plastics do not degrade. And because they remain in the environment for a long time, there is accumulation.
Yeah.
So if we will not prevent and control the input of plastic waste and microplastics into the environment, there will be increasingly higher concentrations of microplastics, both in freshwater and in marine environments.
You mentioned,
On the other hand, the wastewater treatment plants have shown not to be effective in removing microplastics from wastewater. So even the countries where there are a good number of wastewater treatment plants, there may still be discharges of microplastics into the freshwater systems with treated wastewater.
Yeah, you mentioned that plastic pollution is only the tip of the iceberg. So could you elaborate on that? And also, why do you think this deserves public attention?
Well, it is the tip of the iceberg because we do not know, we cannot quantify with the current scarce scientific data on the extent of the problem, both in freshwater ecosystems and in marine ecosystems. Secondly, microplastics are present in aquatic organisms. The research findings that are included in the UNESCO report indicate that microplastics are present in fish in both natural environment and in aquaculture and in different parts of the world, in Europe, in Asia, and Latin America. So this means that the microplastics are ingested by aquatic organisms, and there is a potential risk that microplastics will enter into the food chain when fish feed on aquatic organisms contaminated by microplastics, and way microplastics will move all the way up to the food chain and may even end up on our plates. There were some research results which indicate the presence of microplastics in tap water. We may even have microplastics in this glass of water, but we don't know whether is it okay to drink water with microplastics or whether there are any effects. So that is the main concern, that we need to have more science, more research to know its potential risks.
Yeah, I see. So I'm keen to learn more about something you just said. So the difference between decomposing and fragmentation, and then their implications to the environment and to freshwater.
Yeah. Well, microplastics remain in the environment for a very long period of time because the plastic material doesn't decompose or doesn't biodegrade. Only the bigger plastic materials fragment into small pieces, forming microplastics, and this fragmentation is the result of the forces of wind or sunlight. So it means that we need to consider solutions that will reduce the input of microplastics into the environment, because once they are in the environment, it is very difficult to remove from the environment, and they may remain there for a very long time and accumulate.
So let's move on to that, onto the solutions. How can we address the issue of microplastics?
So addressing microplastics is very complex, it's very challenging, and it's much more challenging than the other pollutants, because plastics are used in all spheres of our society and economies. So plastic management and waste management or wastewater management alone would not address the problem.
Okay.
We have to have a holistic approach and take into account the whole life cycle of plastic materials, starting from more sustainable production, more sustainable design of products. For example, this is a metal straw, which can replace single-use plastic straws. So if we start to switch to more sustainable products, which will not be thrown into the environment as waste after single use, this will have enormous impact in terms of reducing the impact, the waste, environmental waste. On the other hand, we have to look into the life cycle change from the perspective of lifestyles. We have to change our consumer behavior. Then the wastewater treatment plants, whether we have to have more sophisticated, advanced treatment plants and water purification plants, which will also retain the microplastics which are present in the water. So it really requires interventions from source to sea. And for such kind of interventions, there is need to have more scientific information and knowledge. That's where UNESCO's role is.
I see. So I see the holistic approach to tackle this. So I believe another challenge is, how do you encourage policymakers to prioritize this new challenge on top of other environmental challenges?
Well, it is very challenging to encourage policymakers to prioritize one particular issue or particular issues among many priorities. You know, we have to deal with climate change, biodiversity, but the global scale of the microplastic pollution in both freshwater environment and marine environment really requires attention and prioritization at the national level and at the global level. On the other hand, microplastic pollution is also linked to other environmental problems, global challenges, such as biodiversity loss, because one of the main causes of biodiversity loss is water pollution, and microplastic pollution is also, you have seen plastics in fish, in birds, but also we have seen the microplastics present in aquatic environments. So maybe this is also will lead to an increasing rate of biodiversity loss.
Yeah. So we're reaching towards the end of this session. So my last two questions. Why don't you share with us any success stories of countries that have implemented initiatives?
Well, countries are increasingly paying attention to plastic and microplastic pollution, and there are increasing number of countries which have taken some regulatory approaches. For example, banning the intentionally added microbeads, or banning the use of single-use plastic materials, etc. There are also an increasing number of researchers and industries who show interest in the development of products that can replace traditional plastics by more sustainable products or biodegradable plastics or other materials. The other success story is that the countries are taking approaches based on the scientific data, evidence. While it is, I would like to give you an example about the Helcom Convention, which has adopted a policy on pharmaceuticals based on the UNESCO assessment. We hope to generate similar action and policy development by countries with regard to microplastics after the publication of this report.
Wonderful. So just to close, what do you expect our audience here and our audience online to do with the information that you've just shared?
Well, small actions may lead to a big difference if everyone contributes to it. So, just a small to start with, I would like that our audience here and online would start to think next time when they choose plastic products and think whether this is going to add to environmental plastic waste.
Yeah.
Yeah, and secondly, they also can share information. If there are policymakers, I would really encourage that the plastic problem is incorporated into national strategies through in order to develop more systematic, strategic approach to reduce microplastic pollution in freshwater environments from the source to sea approach.
Wonderful. We run out of time, Sarantuyaa, but thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you to our live audience. Thank you to your audience online. And I will see you at our next SOFA session later today. Have a good day.